Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's John O'Leary Live Inspired. It's my pleasure to go ahead and pass the call over to Suzanne Constance. Suzanne, the floor is yours.
Hi, everybody. Hope you're having a good Monday. Welcome back to work. I was asked to talk about asking for help because that was our theme last week. And I thought it was very, I don't know, it was meaningful to me that I was asked because I hate, naturally, as a person, I've always hated asking for work. So I kind of cringed when I got this topic. And then I realized, I think the reason why I never liked asking for help was because I'm the youngest child out of four and youngest by a lot. So my sisters and brother were 11 or 7 years older than me. So they were always giving me help. They were always, my brother was getting on the bus and telling the bully to leave me alone. My sister was fishing me out of the pool when I was 4 and I fell into the pool. I mean, they were always there. And I think growing up, I wanted to be super independent. I wanted to handle everything myself. I felt like I could do it all myself as a young person. And then I found out that I really couldn't. It causes a lot of stress to try to do everything yourself. You can't do as good a job. And the other thing is you kind of shut people out of your life because they want to help you and they want to be a part of your life and they want to understand where you're struggling. So I think as an older, more wise individual, I ask for help all the time now and don't even realize it. And I would say, how am I asking for help now? Like, what was my example? We're going through a lot of change. And so a lot of things that I took for granted maybe a year or so ago, with even at work, like how do you get things done? And of course, we always do things this way. And we all know this, no longer are true because we are changing, we're evolving, we're part of a bigger organization with different types of products and, we've structured differently. So the help I ask for constantly is getting people's perspective. Because we're all going through change. And, people like Andrew, for example, is so helpful to me because he knows the old world and like how we're evolving. And he'll say, Suzanne, this you can't really do it this way anymore. You kind of have to do it this way, or this is going to be too difficult. We have to change something up. We have to look at how we do, different types of initiatives and make it simpler. So that's how I'm asking for help. It is every time I do it, I get so much out of it. I even had to admit that Andrew is very helpful to me today. But I would just recommend all of you ask for help. And when you're feeling stress or when you're feeling like you don't have the right answer or when you're feeling like you need an extra hand, look to in your personal life or work life, look to your friends and your colleagues. So with that, I will pass on to Matt, Coach Matt.
Well, thanks, Suzanne. You couldn't have summed up this last month any better. And so thank you for that. And good to see all the familiar faces. I do like how you use the word old connected to Andrew. So thank you for that. And Stephen Hondras, you're right underneath me right here. Haven't talked to you in a while. So good to see you as well. But all great familiar faces, a lot of familiar faces because this last month, I always get on here and I always say, man, this last month was my favorite. And I have to admit, this last month was my favorite. The engagement, all of you texting in, the number of coaching sessions was at an all-time high. And so much to what Suzanne said, when we're struggling, when we ask for help, who is that one person? And fortunately, some of you chose me to be a part of that. And so I thank you for that. And a wide variety of topics. Suzanne talked about professionally, right? Huddling up with our colleagues. Some of us had other areas, physically, exercise, getting in that morning routine. I can tell you that was mine. I need to get back to the morning walks and get back into the gym. So my one person was actually my son. I said, hey, you're going to the gym, drag the old man with you. I need to get back in. And so he's my accountability partner over the next month. And so again, I'm like Suzanne, don't like to ask for help. A lot of us don't. But again, a wide range of those. A lot of us huddled up about emotionally, like when the day's getting at us, how are we taking breaks? How are we making sure that we're staying, what we call neutral, and making sure our most important relationships we're keeping the most important. So a wide variety of topics. And so again, I just want to thank everyone who chose us to huddle up with you. Special shout outs to Sue and Bill, Deanna, Doreen, Jessica, Mark, Teresa, Melanie, Matt, not me, Dana, Zeta, Joe, Tina, Jerry, Cheryl, Caroline, Eric, Ryan, Nancy, Craig, and Michael. And those were just from the last couple of weeks. And so I say that because one of the things we're trying to make sure that we're doing, John and I and our organization, is to stay in front of you. We're live once a month, just like this. Those of you that are all in get the weekly text right here from Coach Matt. Not one of those goes unanswered. And so we want to be always here. And some of you might think that's just a signature that I just type in every time. Nope, I type it in every single time, always here, because we are always here. And then those for you, again, this last month, those of you that want a safe spot to say, hey, you know, where's an area I need to get better at? What's in my circle of control? And what's my next right step? I'm here to help you with that. And so with that said, what we did over this last month, myself included, and all of you that took that next step, was when we ask for help, much like Suzanne just described, we validate that relationship when we ask them. And so I can't thank you enough for last month's engagement. And as we keep it going, thank you for being here this morning. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce my friend, your friend, Mr. John O'Leary.
Matthew, you are my friend. You're also my coach. And so you asked who was the one person you reached out to. You know this, Matt. It was you. And the one area that I wanted to get better in, if I'm being vulnerable and why not on these calls, is I want to be a better son. We have our parents only for so long. And with my father's illness due to Parkinson's disease, I'll have them for maybe less than I wish, maybe less than I would otherwise. And so I challenged Matt to step in and help support me this month in being all in as a son. And my report back to the entire family is this: 9 times, which is a lot. 9 times over the past month was how frequently I went by, saw my dad, visited with my dad, made my dad dinner or breakfast or lunch, just sat with him somewhere and did life with him. 9 times that I may not otherwise, had I not had someone in my corner reminding me to focus on your most important, stay within your circle of influence, and take your next right step forward. So if you have not yet found that person for you, he's in the call already. His name is Coach Matt, and he'll give you his number at the very end of our time together. I'm going to give you my name right now. I am John O'Leary, and now I get to share with you what the topic is today that you and I discussed. It's going to sound a little harsh, but hang with me the entire time together. And I think you'll find that this is a worthy topic, and one ultimately not so much about death, because that sounds so dark, but one about life. Suzanne, you shared 2 things in your introduction that I was not expecting necessarily to hear from you, but I loved hearing it because it ties perfectly into what we're doing together today. The second thing that I wrote down was we, and you looked at the entire family on this call, are all going through a lot of change. You weren't just talking about professional, but certainly professionally, yeah, we're going through a lot of change, but we as human beings also are going through a lot of change. So that's true for Suzanne, it's true for me, it's true for all of us. The second thing that I heard you share is my brother stood up for me. I would get on the bus, I might get picked on a little bit, but my brother would stand up for me. Being the youngest of 4, it was nice having that advocate with me on the bus of life. Well, isn't that perfect? I wasn't expecting to hear that today, but it's going to tie directly into one of the changes in many of our lives for the past 1 month. That's right. Whether it was you going back to school professionally, or you sending off your children, those you love, your nephews, your nieces back to school over the past several weeks. We thought we would begin this call today with some of the pictures that I personally saw in my social media feed. I saw those little guys making that walk, man, from home. They'd been there for 3 months. Now they're going back. The signs dutifully prepared by some poor parent at home, getting everybody chalked up and ready to rock and roll, man. Hook 'em horns. Right, we're going back, sidewalk, uniform on, our Blues jersey, class of, my God, 2035. I hope I'm alive for it, but 35. They're not sure they're ready for it. Neither are we. These kids are fired up. This one's back at school in a dorm for the first time. Onward from there, onward from there. These kids are getting ready to be sent out the door for the bus. Speaking of the bus, we all remember that walk, in particular, the first time up those steps onto a bus, having no idea who was going to be on that bus or where we were going. It's a feeling that my own teammates around here have experienced. Now, these pictures are from folks that I get to work with that live Inspired. Those are a couple of Heather's babies. These are a couple of Meredith's babies up there. That little girl with that blue bunny His name is Louie. She said as she got out, Mom, I hope I hope no one's there to greet us. Everybody was there to greet them. The media was there and the Blues team was there. So she was crushed in this picture. These are my kids, Jack, Patrick, Henry, Grace, and the puppy dog MMA. And this is my colleague, Sandy. This is our favorite as voted on by my teammates because this little girl represents hope, but she also represents change. So as we board the bus together, family, 1CS, man, board on with me, won't you? We thought we'd begin with a little question. And I'm happy to invite all of you now to grab your favorite keyboard and answer the question on the screen in the chat feature. As you board the bus of life, whether back to school, into a new relationship, into a new fitness center, out of an old relationship, into a new role at WK, 1CS, whatever it might be, what emotions do we experience when we enter into periods of transition, new beginnings, or change? So I'd like you all to type that in right now. Let your fingers do the talking today. What emotions do we experience? You're filling up the chat right now. I'll read a few. I won't read them all, but you're jamming it up. This is awesome. Already 80 responses. This is beautiful. Going to the very tippity top, then moving our way through the bottom. Tom Hurst, brother, you're number one in my book and on the screen. Fear. Me too, Tom. Lauren, trepidation. Excitement. Hope. Isn't that odd? The dichotomy. Excitement, says Marina. Mark, fear. Michelle, anxiety, uncertainty, Nasser. Uncertainty, Caroline. Anxiety, excitement, anxiety. We're going back and forth between the good and the bad. Get ready to leverage that all day long. Excitement, anxiety, praying that I do not fail. Thank you, Sherry, for your honesty. Fear, hope, excitement, anxiety, and excitement, nervousness, excitement. You're seeing a trend here. Let's go to the bottom. More than 100 down. Fred, Isbell, future potential. Well, that sounds good. But then Sue Robinson follows that with this comment. Oh, possibility of failure. These two emotions, don't they? The positive and the negative, the fear and the faith. As we step into and then through change, play as one. So for those of you who feel both excitement and dread around the change in front of you as you board the bus of life, what I will say from our experience in the coaching organization, these are some of the comments that have been fed back to Matt over our other clients. Numbness. Numbness is actually pain. Numbness, insecurity, discomfort, anticipation. Well, that's good, but grief, that's not. Excitement, panic, hope, isolation, and all of them, disorientation. So family, how do we ultimately accept, implement, and sustain change through life? I'm going to just ask you to think about that for a moment. I'll give you a couple answers on it from our perspective today, but how do we do it? How do we embrace the change in front of us? If you want to type it in, feel free. If you want to just sit on it, reflect, how do we embrace and then sustain and then implement and then lead change going forward on the bus, in the office, in the relationship, in the singleness, politically, as a nation, as a leader in life? How do we do it? Because guess what? Suzanne mentioned we are going through a season of change, but guess what? You're going to be going through it tomorrow too, and the next day. And the speed of change will never slow down again. So how do we embrace this? Not without fear, but with boldness and faithfulness. How do we do this? I'm glad you asked, because I had to lean in and ask someone that I look up to, someone that I've been reading for a while, someone that you may hear about in a podcast coming to you soon. Get ready for it, family. His name is Alan Deutschman. Alan Deutschman years ago wrote a book that is relevant today. It gave us the title of today's program. Alan, what was the name of the book? Oh, it sounds dark, Alan. Change or Die. What a dark name for a book. He wasn't setting out to write a book called Change or Die. He set out instead to answer this. If your life depended on it, would you be able to make a change that ensured you would live? That was it. Because he, as a corporate leader, was guiding other organizations through change, and leaders and employees who are also leaders, and family members who are leaders, and children boarding buses who are leaders, were asked the question, how do you make change? And how do you sustain it? And so frequently individuals struggled profoundly with the change. So then he's like, well, if they struggle organizationally or boarding the school bus would change, what about if their life depended upon it? Would they still struggle with that change? Because, it's life and death. At that point, is it easier to embrace change? That was the question he asked. He asked the medical community, talking about smoking and eating and stress and drinking and lack of exercise. If you put in front of patients, human beings, the solution to the problem that ails them, would they make the change? Would they make it? And the research that came back to him, 9-to-1 odds that they would make the change. But that's not what happened. 9-to-1 odds that they would remain status quo, that they would return to the very thing that brought them into the doctor's office in the first place. This is true medically, leaders. But before you think, man, I don't smoke and I'm watching my weight and I'm doing the things right. Yeah. But the kind of change your diet we're talking about here is not just physically, it's relationally, it's spiritually, it's professionally, it's as a human being in life. So how do we embrace, accept, elevate, and then sustain change going forward into our lives? Well, there's 4 ways to do it. We're only going to really focus on one of the ways today, which might give you a whisper of where the content will take us over the next several months. But here we go. Relationship. One thing that they have found to be true with change in your health or in any aspect of life is you may not do this by yourself. You'll need others. You'll need a coach, a mentor, a support group, an Alcoholics Anonymous group. You will need others around you to do life with you. If you try by yourself, you are guaranteeing failure. So that's one thing they found, relationships. But they also found the importance of reframing. And I want to see your face when I talk about this one. Reframing, which is another way of saying bringing forward the purpose of the change in the first place. When you tell a human being, stop smoking, it has all kinds of side effects. Have you heard this before? Yeah, smokers know that. So if you reframe it from being a negative into a positive, and the one example in the story was this: when they pivoted into the gifts that will come in life when they choose to give up this habit. The most common example was this: you will be able to walk your loved one down the aisle. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine what that feels like? Can you imagine holding her hand? Can you imagine? I know you're going to be crying. Can you imagine hugging her? Can you imagine loving the one that she's about to say, I do too? Can you imagine being there? And then backing into saying, well, how do we reframe this? How do we once and for all say goodbye to those things that might steal that moment from us? This reframe experience from negativity into opportunity. That was a big piece of sustaining change long-term, not just getting the quick fix, but the sustained one. But there was more. So it was relationship. It was reframe. I hope you're writing these down. We need this in our lives. The third, this one shocked me when I read it, but the research backs it up. The change has to be radical. It's not easy. It's not as easy as popping a simple pill to get healthy again. We wish that was the case, but it's not that easy. What they found, this is shocking. The research backs it up. 80% of people stop popping the pill because they start to feel okay. After a while, they had the thing that brought them into the ER. They no longer even feel that pain anymore. So they stopped taking the medicine. It was too easy. But if the change required them to lean into others, to reframe why they would do it in the first place, and then to radically reorganize their life, to change their diet, to change their decisions, to do things in brand new ways, to be radical, to be hard, then it could be sustained. That's hard to hear because I don't like it either. But if we're trying to implement and then sustain change for the long term, the price is right, Bob Barker would say, it's got to be hard. It's got to be radical. So we'll come back to that, not today, but we will, I promise you, come back to it. And the final piece, you all know this, it's got to be repetitive. Tragically, it's not a one-off. It's not one call with Coach Matt. It's not showing up for one of these calls one time. Yeah, dude, I was with you guys on the June call. It felt great. Maybe I'll join you a year from today. No, it's repetition. It's habitual. It's creating new behaviors that change your work, your words, your performance, your life. So it's that repeat. It's like the recycle icon. When you ultimately come back, you repeat it and you do it again. So today, my friends, the one I want to focus on with you is this. Relationships. We need others. Suzanne mentioned that. For a long time, she needed them. Then she recognized as the youngest of four, I don't think I want them anymore. And then as a leader, even sometimes dreadfully reaching out, she said to Andrew, who I also love, hi, Andrew, we need others. We need to recognize you may not board that bus all by yourself. We need to board it with others. And then once you get on, turn around and then help the next person come on board with you. That's how we're called to do life, not solely dependently or independently, but interdependently. Doing life. You heard me whisper this last month. We're coming out of roar this time. Habitual, baby. Repeat. We're going to keep driving this nail into the wood until it makes sense. Here we go. We need others. I certainly needed others. You all need others. Here's one story I'd like to share. This little boy wasn't pictured the first time you saw these kids boarding the school bus on my Facebook feed, but he's boarding it today with each of us. That little guy being carried up those steps by some classmates, that's your friend and Coach Matt's. His name, you know it by now, John O'Leary. That is John O'Leary. John O'Leary got burned as a kid, spent 16 months at home, and struggled mightily with the change, not only what he went through, but the changes that remained out of his control going forward. Primarily this, the one I'll focus on today, the change of going back to school. As a little kid, let me throw him back up there right before he boards that bus. That wrapping remains on his head. It's where they've taken 13 layers of skin as a donor site. The fingers, 1CS family, remain amputated and at that point seemingly useless. I can't stand. I can't move. I don't fit in. People will make fun of me. That's what I know. I don't desire this change. I don't want it. I don't want it, Mom. And so I begged her, don't make me go. Mom, do not make me go. Please do not make me go. And that day as we left physical therapy, normally what we would do leaving PT, 7:00 meeting, 8:00 it wraps up, gets me back into the old station wagon and takes me home for a private tutor. This day, that little boy and his mother standing behind him gets back into that broken down station wagon and doesn't come home. This time it's about saying yes to new possibility, which I didn't want to do. Who does? Who does? I didn't sign up for it. Who does? But she's throwing me back into this little station wagon, taking me past our house. I'll never forget when she made the straight, instead of making the right at the street that is mine, called Clayton. She goes straight on Ballast, makes a left-hand turn, makes a right-hand turn on Bope, and I'm begging her the entire way, don't make me go, Mom. Mom, do not make me go, please. Mom, I think I'm sick. I'm sick. She doesn't heed my knowledge. She takes me forward. And as we make a right-hand turn onto Bope Road, that's when my heart begins to change. And really, leaders, 1CS, family, humans, my life begins to change in a very positive, profound way. They're lining along Bope Road, along this long strand of buses. For those of you who've been in a school building recently, you know what this is like. But even though school has already started and these kids should be in their classrooms, they are all outside. They are all standing on the streets. I don't know what they're doing out there until we get a little bit closer, and they're holding up poster boards. And these little kids with their poster boards held high hold up signs, and I wish I had an actual picture of it. The signs say, "Welcome back, John. Welcome back. It's been 16 months, man. Your life is radically different than what you signed up for when you left on January 16th on that Friday afternoon. But we welcome you home. We welcome you back." I saw the 6th graders and 7th graders, 8th graders, even the big 8th graders, man, they were practically men and women back then. And then the 3rd and 2nd, 4th, 1st, and kindergartners, as we got closer, that's when I saw my classmates. These little ones lining the wall with faces like this look of sheer joy, not judging, not hating, not mocking, but loving. This little boy whose life was radically changed back into an environment that was going to be filled with a lot of change going forward. This was hard for me to enter into that day, but it changed my life that day, and it has remained changed subsequently. Change is not something I look forward to. I don't look forward to it as a dad, as a son, as a leader organizationally, as a human being. I don't like change. Most of us don't. I usually meet it with anxiety. I usually meet it with fear and trepidation. But I found in my life when I can meet it with a little bit of faith, courage, and boldness. It changes not only what happens in the future, it changes the way I show up in the present. So students, I'm going to be quiet for a moment as I bring on another classmate. I want you to think about a time in your school. And I want you to share that example. When you boarded the bus, when you stepped into the classroom, when you were by yourself at the lunch table, when you knew no one athletically, when you tried out for the play and maybe you failed at it. I want you to share one example when one person stepped forward and they made you feel like you belonged. I had an entire school. Do you have one? They made you feel like you mattered. And they made you feel like the best was yet to come. So family, friends, leaders, heroes, students, 1CS, class. I'd like you to lean into chat. I got to share first, but I'd like you to share now. Think back to your days in school. Oh man, they were awkward. Dang, you were gangly. Oh, your hair was a train wreck. What were you thinking with those outfits? Fine. But think about a time when you felt isolated, when you felt anxiety, maybe when you felt numb. You were dealing with change. I'm one person, classmate, guardian, parent, teacher, coach, pastor, rabbi, one person stepped up. Just drop her name in, drop their name in, drop his name in, and how they impacted you. Real briefly, we're going to spend a grand total of 22 more seconds on this question. Drop in their name. And why did it matter? How did they influence? How did they elevate? How did they shift you from the way you had felt, maybe the way I felt going back that day, into how you felt afterwards? We all have a story like this. Maybe not coming back from the hospital after 16 months, but family. Everybody's got a story. Usually not the one we tell the world. Looking back at your own life, who was that one person for you and how did they impact you? Comments are coming in again, fast and furious. Tom Simpson, thank you, Eric. Rita, Heather. I love school. Mrs. Starnari, thank you, Gina. I did not love school. I struggled, but God bless Ms. Startarni. A fellow student, just listen to this from Fred Isbell. A fellow student who sat with me at lunch, first day in a new school after moving 3,000 miles. Man, I had nobody. But that day I had one. My pastor, Kelly, who later became my best friend. Mr. Toffin, my science teacher. These are great. Mrs. Brown, my sister, Russ Marshall, Cynthia Z, boom, and boom. And they just keep coming. Tell them. Don't tell me anymore. Fine, you told me. Let's move forward, family. What does this mean, though? Here's the crazy thing, remarkable thing, blessing thing. I don't know about you, but I finished that experience in grade school. For me, that was 1988, a lifetime ago. And I remember the experience. I remember who was there. I remember what was said. I remember how it made me feel, and I still do, but it doesn't stop there. This is, as you see it up there, a picture of my beautiful bride who knows that story. But she knows that story not only because sometimes I tell it at a coaching session, she knows it because we've lived it. This is our wedding party. I know it's like, oh my gosh, how many boys did you have in the wedding party? I know. Big family on her side. So I had to invite a bunch of buddies on my side of this long, goofy train of men. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those fellas. 5 of them were grade school friends. 5 of the men who stood behind me when I said I do also stood behind me when I came back and I didn't want to go to school. When I didn't sign up for this change, they were there then. They were there for me in 6th grade, through middle school, high school, even though we parted ways, they were there. And we've remained together since. That's the power of doing change together. I had to look it up last night at our wedding list. I'm going through like, 17 classmates from a school of 31 were at my wedding. I get 17 of the little kids who were there holding up posters. We went through this profound unwanted change together. We said yes to it, and it changed all of our lives. So with that being said, what I'm going to do is take a big sip of coffee. You probably think, oh, Lear, you don't need more coffee, man. You need to tone it down, man. I'm mainlining life today. Change or die. I say yes. Let's change. Let's embrace it. Let's step into the truth that it is not easy, but the foundation is firm and the best is yet to come. So Coach Matt, I've done enough talking. I'd like you to step forward and pull through some of the comments that you've heard today.
Well, I've been so busy here writing them down. Now they're all unorganized and there's no real reason why I can go through them. But relationship, refrain, radical, and repeat. And what I hope you have learned from us, those of you that are all in, that join these calls, that get the weekly text, is we're trying to do exactly that. I look on this screen and I screen down side to side and I see so many friends, so many relationships. It's why I love this process that we've put in place, to where we are texting back and forth. We are doing life together. We are huddling up on coaching sessions. We know that a relationship is built through time, and time establishes trust. And I hope you know by now that we are always here and all in. I love some of the comments that were coming in. Bill said 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Sue R, you said, call Coach Matt, right? So you know we're always here. Lauren, I love what you said about next right step. That's the reframe part of this. What we try to do is we try to help you. And what I hear in coaching sessions is, Matt, I've talked to a lot of people, maybe I've went to some therapy, but what I love about your process is you help me get focused on my next right step. Yes, there's an emotional side to it. Yes, there's a piece, but what you help me do is you help me get in my circle. And then we just talk about what's the next right step, because that's the only way, is moving forward. Our next right step leads to the next right step. And some of you, I get this comment a lot. Hey, sorry, Matt, haven't replied to a text a couple weeks in a row, right? But I want you to know it reminds me. That's all we're trying to do. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Stepping in front of you, stepping in front of you. What's the next right step? What's the next right step? So I hope you know, as we move forward, we are all in. And as John reframes this, we're going to take asking for help and turn it 180, or maybe 360. I don't know which would be better. But now that we had the courage this past month, and I know not all of us, right? It's tough. So maybe not all of us took that next step to ask for help. But those of us that did know the reward that we received, because we started doing lives with somebody. It started that first R, relationship, right? And so this month, think of one person that you know that is out there, might be going through a period of change, a transition, a new beginning. And let's take time to reach out to that person. And this is going to be a process that we're going to pull throughout the month, because it's not just as easy as reaching out to them, right? Because what we actually know is most of the time when we reach out and say, hey, how you doing? They say, I'm okay. And what do we know about most of those answers? They're not okay, right? And so what we would ask you to do is think about who's one person in your circle. And if you will pick up your phone as you think of that one person and text me the name, and it can be later today, but if you know that person right now, text the name of that one person to 314-207-5010. Hopefully those of you that are all in have you in my phone as Coach Matt, not just that number, right? Put Coach Matt in there. And then we're going to pull this through this month, because what we know is true is when we reach out to somebody, it validates that friendship. And so with that said, much like John's stories and so forth, and by the way, Craig Peterson, you get extra bonus points today when you said in the comments, tug the wire. I caught that one, right? That's exactly what we're asking you to do, is not only last month to ask for help, but now we're going to be more intentional. And what I know is, a couple months ago, we focused on gratitude. And what I know about gratitude is the best way to feel it is to express it. And we express it through reaching out to others. And so again, I cannot emphasize enough. We are here for you. We're live today, all 320 some of you. Those of you that are all in, if you're not, make sure your colleagues are. I got 2 fresh all-ins this morning right before the call. So somebody must have said, hey, you on this call this morning? And so thank you for that. But let's continue to do life, much like the Change or Die says. Relationship, reframe, radical, and repeat. Let's continue to do that. Back over to you, Jo.
Miller, there's a restaurant in St. Louis on the Hill that I love to go to. And every time I go there, I feel like the meal's a little bit better than the last time, every single time. And I feel like when I hear you pull this through, that's how you are with us as a coach, as a friend, as a guide. It's just a little bit better. Best meal I ever had, man. So I thank you for your work and for pulling this through. I'm just going to challenge one thing you shared, though. You said, you don't have to do it now, just sometime today. And what I'm going to say is Miller's wrong. Miller's way wrong, because later today is not promised. And because later today is going to get busy. And because later today there's going to be storms. And later today your email is going to get blown up. And later today life's going to go off the trails and tracks just a little bit. And later today you're going to forget all about what you felt right now. And so tomorrow is not promised. And later today is not either. And so rather than waiting for it and maybe getting around to it, why wait? That's one of the gifts of embracing change, is doing it now. So my friends, bullet point number 3, radical. We'll come back to it in a couple months, but I'd like you to model it right now. Be radical enough to grab that number, 314-207-5010. That's my friend, Coach Matt. Text him the name of one person. He's not going to share it publicly. We're not going to reach out to that person on your behalf. This is going to remain in confidence. But this is going to set up the conversation that we have with you until we come back together in October. It's a big deal. So, Matt, I love you, but you're wrong. I'm not going to wait till later on today. Grab your phones right now and text Miller, 314-207-5010. That's the number. You should have it in, as I do, Coach Matt. So hopefully you got it in. If not, Amanda typed it into the chat feature. It's there in the chat feature of the screen. No excuses. No excuses. So leaders with no excuses. I am expecting right now that Miller's phone just keeps vibrating. Like his desk is like shaking now as it just keeps ringing as people are texting the names of individuals in their life going through change. And if you're like, man, I got no one, then write down the name of any human being that that comes to mind first, because that person is going through change. I promise you. We all are. Let's not hide from it, though. Let's not hide from it at all. What we do around here is we invite you not only to do life with Coach Matt professionally, personally, relationally, spiritually, but we invite you to come into our lives and say, hey, John, there's someone in our community who needs help. And we have created, and I'll get emotional sharing this, so I'm not going to go into a whole lot of details. I told Andrew about this on the front side of the call. So Andrew, here comes the emotion, man. But we have what we call here organizationally, the little love list. There it is, man. We track the names of people who are struggling right now in life. Many of these are children who've experienced some kind of trauma, sometimes burn related, sometimes an unwanted diagnosis, sometimes abuse, sometimes parents splitting, sometimes moving, and it's a hard new school year. It could be a million things that bring them into our world, but we bring them all in. We put them on an Excel sheet. The sheet keeps getting longer and longer, as does our focus on them as individuals. And one of our favorites over the last 8 months was pictured up there a moment ago. And Matt, later on this week, will send out a little Monday morning motivation we wrote about Ryan. He's a little fellow who was being treated for 8 months for burns on 90+% of his body. Very similar story to mine. And we just fell in love with this little guy. We fell in love with him and his family. Coach Matt texts with mom and dad all the time. We know them, we love them, we know the family, which makes the heartache of hearing from them last Friday that their little boy, after an 8-month street fight. And if you've ever touched a muffler with your hand, you know what it feels like to be burned on your pinky, to go through 8 months of that kind of care. And then ultimately to have it seemingly be unsuccessful. That is agony. It's agony for us. It's agony for the staff. It's agony for the doctors. And it's certainly agony for the family that was with him every step along the way. And yet family, Andrew, team in the Houston office who supported us during this time, we're not going to take our foot off the accelerator. It's not the change we wanted. We didn't sign up for that. We wanted a homecoming, not that kind of homecoming. We wanted this little boy to come home back to his house in New Jersey. That's what we wanted. But we're going to keep showing up. We're going to keep supporting. We're going to keep doing life with people. Maybe this will even motivate it to do it even better going forward. So through an email or text that Matt will send out later this week, you'll read a little bit more about why we fell so head over heels for little Ryan. Some of you came along for the ride with that, but also unapologetically how we're going to keep falling in love with other kids. We're just going to keep doing this now, maybe to honor Ryan and honor his life and honor his fight. So we told you today the theme was change or die. And I told you, yeah, that sounds dark, but this is filled with hope and evolution and new beginnings and life. Ryan's life models this, but so does yours. So the formal part of our conversation now comes to its appropriate conclusion. What we normally do is have one of your senior leaders step in. They put a bow on a program and share a little bit of what they heard, how they're going to model it this week and next week and going forward. And then Miller and I stick around just for a little bit for the unplugged session. So if there are any questions that you may have at the very, very tippity top of the hour as you wrap up this session, move into the next, we're going to stick around. But I believe Andrew might be Suzanne.
Yeah, Andrew, unless you saw anything in the chat, I was trying to pay closer attention than usual to it. Unless you have anything, we'll turn it over to Suzanne to wrap it up, and then we'll go into some Q&A.
No, I think the comments and stories in the chat were right on line with what we were talking about. Appreciate everybody's participation. We learn every time, and so this is just another opportunity for us to learn and grow together.
Suzanne, back over to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's always when you're talking or sharing an experience, it's always so interesting and impactful to connect the dots with other people's experiences, to realize that, some of I was just struck by the fact that, like, the adjectives we use around change, some of our feelings, fear, anxiety, some excitement and stuff. It just, we were all sort of feeling very similar. And then as we look at some of the experiences the team has had, in the past several months, even with this, with this initiative and thinking about that little boy, our hopes, our dreams, it just makes you realize how precious every moment is, and how it's so easy not to get really connected to the deepest level of what's important. Like, as I was listening to this, I was thinking, who are the people who changed, are going through change in my life? One of my best friend, the same person I texted, who changed my life coming into school in a new town, her mother's very ill. So reaching out to her is so important. And I think these moments make us connect back to what's really important. So I thank Coach Matt and John and all of us, for being a part of it. And I just look forward to all of us, working together to just be the people we want to be there personally for the people in our lives that we care about, for people that come into our lives, maybe even just for a short period of time that we want to help, and for each other. So thank you all for participating and for really sharing what's going on with you.
Thank you, Suzanne. Amanda, anything for the good of the order?
I was just going to say, we went ahead and unmuted everyone. So if they would like to unmute themselves and ask any questions, share any stories. Also, I just want to remind you, if you're not all in yet, I just put in the chat box again how you can be all in. It is great to be all in. So make sure you do so Coach Matt can reach out to you. Back over to you.
And then I'll just say, John and I have been keeping in touch with the family. And so Kathleen, Dad Scott, sister to Scott, Pam, and Grandma Dolores. Grandma and I had this amazing conversation this weekend about how to support her son, who's going back home to a home that he lived with his son on the water with Ryan's fishing boat still sitting there, and how to best support him without pushing him. And it was just this beautiful conversation. And what it reminds me of is a couple podcasts ago, can't remember his first name, last name Henderson. And it's the gentleman said, is there somebody in the world that knows what's going on inside of you? And I say that because last month, that's what we really tried to do, is say, hey, if you have someone, great. And if not, we're here for you. And so we continue to not only serve you, but this large community of people. And much like a lot of you that are all in that get my weekly text, these community members, we call them the love list. they're getting the same text that says, hey, how can we help? And here's what we know. I'll give you some bonus content for those of you, the 298 that are still here, is here's what we know. And I whispered this, is that when we say, hey, how you doing? Most of us just say, okay, right? Which is a lie. We're not. And so what we're going to push through this month is then when they say that, we kind of say, no, you're not going to get away with this, right? I'm either going to do 1, 2, or 3. You pick one of them, right? And so that whole showing up and repeating, let's really lean into each other, because here's what we know. We've talked about this on other calls. The team will always outperform the individual every time, every single time. So the more we include people personally, the more we include people professionally, it's where the highest results are. That's where we're going to find success professionally, and it's where we're going to find significance personally. And so that's all we're asking you to do. Lean into somebody. If not, we hope it's us, right? Again, I have so many familiar faces, friends, family on this call. Can't wait to see more of you in person as 22 comes around and 23 starts. And so with that said, I can't remind you enough to say, hey, we're all here. We're always here, all here. I just combined all in and always here, all here, but we truly are. So with that said, we'll open it up to some comments, questions, anything for the good of the order.
Hey, Matt and Jo, a question that came to mind. I know you guys are doing a lot of great things with your love list, and I'm sure the list continues to grow. If we have someone we know, a little one that we're tied to somewhere that maybe should or could or might want to be on the love list, what's that process?
Yes. Text me. Oh, I'm getting feedback somewhere. Might be you, Jo. Text me 314-207-5010. We will put them on that list. Here's the beautiful thing about the world is that usually when you send us a name, 75% of the time, maybe John would agree, we've already, someone else in their community has all reached out to us. We have this phenomenal, amazing responsibility that when people think of when something happens in their community, we're thought of. We get emails and texts daily. So yeah, just text us and we will immediately connect. And we're already putting dots on the map. We have a little guy in Indy that we know is next to Tom. We have what we call the 3 amigos that are up in the Chicago area that John is doing a Zoom call with this week. Actually, 3 guys, 3 young men, 21, 23, and 22. That are in therapy together, all burn victims that John's doing a Zoom call with. So we're putting the dots in the map. So as you send those in, and then we know where a lot of you are, right? That's why we tapped into Houston. That's why we know St. Cloud. We know where people are. So that's what we really want to do more than anything, is make sure that not only we're doing it professionally here, but we're also doing it personally in our communities.
And Tom Hurst said, investing in hearts, not stock prices. What we know to be true is the more you invest in hearts, the more you love people well, the more the stock price also elevates. But the focus is not the stock price. The focus is showing up fully, authentically as yourself and meeting others where they are as they are. And in doing that authentically, as Matt just suggested, the team wins. The individual may not at first, but the team does. And so I love these calls. And I love the work we do outside of them. Not only the calls you have with Miller that he's not allowed to share the specific information, but he whispers about broadly the types of conversations being had. But then these comments that are coming out online, like the one that you just brought up, Andrew, what do we do with these kids? Text Miller. We want to serve them. We want to be there for them in a season where they may not have someone else. So now they got us, but they also got you. So we'll be looping everybody into to continually come alongside of us and be there for people going through change. So any questions? I know we're moving on a little bit late into the hour, and we want to make sure we meet you where you are. Any specific questions from this content you'd like to ask?
I just want to say I have 144 texts, but I see 274 on the call. So some of you still need to text in. And I just want to give a shout out to Jo. As somebody who's been his coach for 4 years, he really modeled our content by being very coming back at me on that. So good job, John. Way to take your next right step. I like that.
Thank you, Miller. All right. Any additional questions, comments, feedback, challenges? We're not always looking for the pat on the back. Sometimes we want, hey, dude, level with me. Here's what I don't agree with. Perfect. So we're unafraid of doing life together.
I'll just add one more thing. John I'll send it out in a text as well. If you're not all in, make sure you are. Some of you wanted to write in again to support the family. We'll be sending that out as well throughout the text. And just a reminder, we have a dedicated website out there. I'll drop the link in there, JohnO'Learyinspires.com/Walter-Kluwer has our most recent podcast on grief and the Monday morning motivation about Ryan. And so that is a dedicated website just to WK. So just a reminder, our as Steve puts it, the John O'Leary Media Company, you're connected to that as well. And so with that said, I'll just end with, as John always ends every call for this time, and until next time, I'm Coach Matt. He's John O'Leary. Today's your day. Live inspired. Keep in touch. Send us a text. We're all in.
This does conclude today's call. If you would like to stay on a little bit longer, please feel free. We'll stay on until the top of the hour. So it gives us about 8 minutes. Again, you're able to unmute your microphones if you need to put something in the chat box. Just a reminder, our next call is October 3rd. If it's not on your calendar already, please make sure that you reach out to me. You can reach out to me via email or on Teams, and we'll make sure that you get added. Again, the next call is October 3rd. If no one else would like to say anything, we'll go ahead and conclude today's call a little bit early. We'll see you guys next time, October 3rd. Have a great day. This does conclude today's call.
Thanks, Amanda. Thanks, team.